Good evening. This is Friday, November 3rd, 4 days until the 2006 midterm elections, and there is breaking news at this hour. An editorial in the Army Times, Navy Times, Marine Corps Times, and Air Force Times that will call for the resignation or dismissal of Defense Secretary Rumsfeld. That will come out on Monday. We will go on in depth on that in a moment. First, in our fifth story on the countdown, a November surprise of a nuclear nature. When our children and grandchildren look back at this period, one question will overwhelm all the rest. President Bush said this morning at a rally in Missouri, "Did we do everything in our power to fight and win the war on terror?" Well, sir, if you personally insisted that instruction manuals on how to build atomic bombs should be put on the Internet so your party could boast about finding nukes in Iraq, frankly, no, the grandkids will say you did not do everything in your power to fight and win the war on terror. How the Republicans gave away the keys to the atomic store so they could backstop a talking point. Thousands upon thousands of pages having been posted on the Internet in an effort dubbed the Operation Iraqi Freedom Document Portal. All the documents having first been captured in Baghdad after its fall, including pages dealing with nerve agents like sarin gas and what are thought to be about a dozen pages amounting to a roadmap for building an atomic bomb. Charts, diagrams, mathematical equations, basically everything you need except the stuff. Congressional Republicans on the House and Senate Intelligence Committees having argued for the need to publicize the documents in the hopes, they said, of leveraging the Internet to find evidence of WMD in Iraq. Among those who thought this would be a bad idea, John Negroponte, the Bush administration director of national intelligence. The Republican chairman of the Intelligence Committees, Congressman Peter Hoekstra of Michigan, and Senator Pat Roberts of Kansas, having written a letter to Negroponte last November in which they insisted the documents be released because the general public could do a better job of vetting the documents than could the intelligence community. We are proposing that you immediately develop a process to, consistent with the necessary security guidelines, release these documents to the general public. At minimum, this public assistance could point the intelligence community to the small subset of information that is likely to be of importance. This proposal takes risk, but we believe it is manageable risk. The president himself then overruling the intelligence experts like Mr. Negroponte, who disagreed with the House and Congress Republicans by signing an order, and thus was this website born. This from the commander-in-chief making mention of national security and terrorism some 18 times at that campaign stop in Missouri this morning. A president whose administration did not pull down the website even when the International Atomic Energy Agency protested that the information within could help rogue states like Iran develop nuclear weapons. It did so only after the New York Times reported on those objections last night. Former White House Chief of Staff Andrew Card admitting to Mr. Negroponte's objections this morning on the Today Show, while, of course, attacking the New York Times.
Actually, John Negroponte warned us that we don't know what's in these documents, so these are being put out at some risk. And that was a warning that he put out right when they first released the documents. We've pulled them down, and I think the government has acted very quickly, and we've pulled them down. I'm a little concerned that the New York Times has advertised them to the world.
Yeah, I guess they invented the Internet. Time now to call in nuclear weapons expert Joseph Cirincione, author of Deadly Arsenals, currently the director for nonproliferation at the Center for American Progress. Thank you for some of your time tonight.
It's my pleasure, Keith.
Two words we've been hearing a lot today about this: accidental and inadvertent, as in U.S. officials admit some sensitive material may have accidentally been released. Was there anything accidental about this? Isn't there a damn the risk element throughout this whole story?
Well, this is a textbook case of what happens when you politicize intelligence, when you brush aside the advice of our own intelligence officials and mock the UN officials here, when you decide that your own instinct, your own zeal for proving that somehow, somewhere, Saddam must have had weapons overrides every other consideration. The accidental homicide is still homicide. Did we accidentally release this information? Maybe, but the fact is we released it. We gave terrorists and other nations a roadmap on how to build a nuclear bomb.
Was there or could there have been any national security benefit to putting this stuff on the web in the first place?
Absolutely none whatsoever. Most of this material was a dozen years old. It's stuff that Saddam had developed before the 1991 war and had released to UN inspectors then and released again very recently in 2002. There was nothing new here, no urgent material. UN inspectors had gone over it for years. We've had 1,000 of our own inspectors in Iraq for 2 years. In the Iraq Survey Group going over all this information. This is a case of congressional zealots, of ideologues thinking that they can't trust our own intelligence officials, that somehow they knew better, and it shows you what happens. They've caused real harm to the national security of this country.
The White House Communications Director, Mr. Bartlett, tried to claim on MSNBC today that the sensitive material was not information that anyone with a desire to build a nuclear weapon did not have access to already, that the same types of information were already available elsewhere on the web. Are either of these things even remotely true, or is this just cut and dried? The president risked the national security by insisting on this website.
It is absolute nonsense. Look, I've been in the nonproliferation business for almost 20 years, even before there was an internet. It is a myth that you can go on the internet and get a design for a nuclear weapon. Go try. Go Google it. You'll get discussions, some of the physics properties involved in the nuclear explosive process, but nothing like what the New York Times described. Diagrams, charts, dimensions, diameter, fusing mechanisms, description of explosive tests that Iraq conducted. Many of these diagrams and documents were given over to the IAEA in the UN process before the war. They released them after editing that information out, after making sure that there was nothing available. It was the IAEA inspectors now who, once they saw this material posted in September, started complaining about it. And what Mr. Carr did not tell you was they pulled the information down only yesterday, after the New York Times started this story, called them about it. Then and only then did they realize that the real damage that they were doing.
And in terms of who did damage here, the people who decided, the politicians who decided to put this website out, and the New York Times for revealing it, who are the bad guys and who are the good guys in that equation? The
journalists are the heroes here. They got the stuff pulled down. This is what we want our journalists to be doing, to exposing these kinds of abuses of power. It's Chairman Hoekstra and Chairman Roberts who insisted, against all the evidence, against everything we know, against what David Kaye has told us, what the Iraq Survey Group has told us, there were no nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons in Iraq. They were desperate to try and prove that case, somehow justify this extremely costly and catastrophic war. It's their zealotry that's caused the harm, not investigative journalism.
It's absolute madness. Nuclear weapons expert Joseph Cirincione, great thanks for your time tonight,
My
sir.
pleasure, Keith.
For more on the political impact